They tried to humiliate me over dinner, left me standing at the door like I didn't belong. My husband said nothing. His mother smirked. But what they didn't know was that I built their empire. Every dollar he invested was mine. Every contract they celebrated and signed with my support. So I smiled, walked away, and took the house, the firm, and their legacy with me. Now he texts me, broken and begging, but I don't respond, because the woman they tried to break just became the one they answer to. The maitre d' didn't even look up when he said it. "I'm sorry, madam. There's no reservation under your name." I blinked, confused. "That's not possible. I was invited to dinner with my husband's family. They should already be here." He checked the screen again, then gave a rehearsed, polite smile. "There is a reservation for 6 under Morgan Sinclair, but I'm afraid your name is not listed." Before I could respond, I heard her voice, polished, sharp, and unmistakably smug. "Oh, Claire." I turned. Morgan Sinclair, my mother-in-law, stood a few feet away in a perfectly tailored cream blazer, her platinum hair swept into a sculpted knot. Her smirk was as intentional as her pearl earrings. "Did you really think I'd include you in tonight's dinner?" Behind her sat her 2 daughters, Charlotte and Emma, both mid-laugh, both watching me like I was part of the entertainment. And there, in the middle of it all, was Adam, my husband, stiff, unblinking, silent. My heart thudded, but I kept my face neutral. I was under the impression this was a family dinner. Morgan's eyes sparkled cruelly. "It is. That's why we didn't count you." Charlotte snorted. Emma covered her mouth like she didn't want to laugh but couldn't help it. "Adam?" He just looked down at his water glass. A sharp, hollow silence wrapped around me. Other diners were starting to notice. Eyes flicked my way. A few waiters whispered behind the host podium. The embarrassment should have burned, but it didn't. Because in that moment, watching Morgan glow in the attention, watching Adam shrink into his seat, something in me shifted. The old me might have smiled and walked away. But tonight, I smiled. Slowly, deliberately, then turned to the maitre d'. "Would you be so kind," I said, calm and clear, "as to ask the owner to come out?" Morgan's laugh rang out like a champagne glass shattering. "Oh, please. You think the owner of this place is going to come out just for you?" I didn't even look at her. I kept my eyes on the maitre d'. "Yes, I believe he will. Because tonight I wasn't just someone she could dismiss. And in about 3 minutes, Morgan Sinclair was going to learn exactly why." The maitre d' hesitated, glancing toward the dining room, unsure whether to follow my request. Then, before he could decide, a smooth baritone voice cut through the tension. "Claire?" I turned. Daniel Leon, owner of Leon and Company, stood just beyond the host stand, impeccably dressed in a navy-tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair combed back, eyes calm and focused on me. His gaze slid past Morgan, Adam, and their table like they weren't even there. "It's been too long," he said, stepping forward. I smiled. Warm, familiar. "It has. You look good." "So do you. What brings you in tonight?" I gestured casually to the table behind me. Morgan stiffened. Apparently, I wasn't on the guest list. A bit of a misunderstanding. Daniel's expression darkened just enough for Morgan to notice. "That won't do at all." Morgan let out a tight, condescending laugh. "Daniel, with all due respect, this is a private family dinner. Claire wasn't invited. There's no need to—" Daniel turned toward her, his polite mask still in place. "Of course, this restaurant doesn't accept walk-ins." Morgan nodded, triumphant. "Exactly. But Claire," he continued without missing a beat, "isn't a walk-in. She's family." The table fell silent. Charlotte's wine glass trembled in her hand. Emma looked between Morgan and Daniel like she'd missed an important memo. Adam still didn't speak, but he wasn't smiling anymore. Morgan forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Family? I wasn't aware you two were so close." "She trained here," Daniel said, "years ago. Fresh out of culinary school. She was one of the best I ever worked with." Morgan's face froze. She worked here? I turned to her then, voice quiet and controlled. Before I married Adam, I worked in fine dining. Daniel was my mentor. Morgan scoffed. How quaint. Daniel ignored her. He looked to the maitre d'. Prepare a place for Claire at their table, and let Chef Adrian know. She's to receive the signature course. The maitre d' nodded instantly and disappeared into the kitchen. I stepped toward the table, calm and composed. Looks like there's plenty of room after all. And for the first time all evening, Morgan Sinclair had nothing to say. Dinner was served in tense silence. The waiters moved with swift, practiced grace, but the energy at the table had changed. Daniel's presence had shifted the balance, and Morgan knew it. Still, she wasn't finished. She picked up her wine glass, swirling it just enough to seem elegant. You know, Claire, it's impressive how far you've come, from service work to being here. I smiled gently. Service work teaches humility and discipline, things I value. Charlotte snickered softly. Emma looked away. Morgan leaned in, eyes cold. Of course, but let's not pretend. You don't have to work now, do you? Adam provides well, always has. Adam shifted uncomfortably. I glanced at him, still silent, still spineless. Is that what you think? I asked, tilting my head. Isn't it true? Morgan replied smoothly. Your boutique job. It's charming, but let's be honest. You wouldn't survive on your own, dear. A small laugh escaped me. Not forced, not bitter, amused. I set down my fork and folded my hands. You really believe Adam supports me? Morgan's smile widened. Of course he does. That's why you're able to play at Independence. I turned to Adam. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Tell her. He didn't speak. No? I said, turning back to Morgan. Then I will. I leaned forward, keeping my tone measured, just loud enough for the whole table to hear. When Adam wanted to launch his first investment fund, he didn't have the capital. He had the idea. I had the money. Morgan's smile faltered. That's not true. It is, I said simply. I funded the startup phase, negotiated the initial real estate contracts, and sat through every legal meeting while your son hid behind buzzwords he barely understood. Charlotte's jaw dropped. Emma sat frozen. Morgan's napkin slipped from her lap. You're lying. The paperwork says otherwise. Adam opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a look. You think I'm here because I need him. The truth is, he needed me. Still does. I picked up my wine glass again, calm as ever. You've spent years trying to make me feel small, Morgan. But you forgot something. She didn't blink. You can't break a woman who built everything herself. I arrived home before Adam. The house was quiet, too quiet, and for once, it didn't feel like mine. I walked straight past the kitchen, past the staircase, and into the office. The one Adam called his command center. Glass desk, dual monitors, a safe hidden behind a framed certificate he never earned, a gift from Morgan to make him feel like more than he was. The code? His birthday. He never thought I'd use it. The safe clicked open. Inside, business documents, bank records, legal agreements. But I was only interested in one file, the original investment contract, the one that proved I was the sole financial origin of his firm. I didn't take it, just photographed it. I wanted him to see it still sitting there, a silent reminder of what he'd lost. Then I stepped into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from under the bed, and started packing. Not in rage, not in sadness, just clarity. By the time Adam walked through the front door, I was on the couch, dressed, calm, my suitcase by my side. He paused in the doorway, eyebrows furrowed. Claire, what are you doing? I looked up slowly. Leaving. He blinked. Wait, what? Is this about dinner? Look, my mom was out of line, but you let her humiliate me, Adam. Again, in public, in front of strangers. He ran a hand through his hair. I was trying to avoid a scene. I stood. And I'm done avoiding reality. I walked past him toward the door, suitcase rolling behind me. You can't just take half of everything, he blurted, voice suddenly sharp. That's not how this works. I turned. You're right. I pulled a sealed envelope from my purse and placed it on the counter. That's a copy of the partnership contract you never read. The one that makes me majority owner. He paled. That's not possible. You should really read your own paperwork, Adam. Outside, the night air felt cleaner. I didn't look back. Inside that house was a man who had built his name on my money and let his mother try to break me. Now, it was my turn to break away. I had just reached the elevator in the lobby when my phone buzzed. Adam, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because he wouldn't understand it if I said it. The next day, my lawyer sent over the draft divorce settlement. I reviewed it over coffee, barefoot in my temporary suite, sunlight pouring across the pages. Everything was in order. 51% equity in the investment firm, primary ownership of the downtown penthouse, frozen marital accounts until distribution. It wasn't revenge, it was restitution. That evening, Adam showed up. No warning, no call, just showed up. The concierge called to ask if I'd let him up. I paused. Send him up. One last conversation. I owed myself the final word. He stepped in looking ragged, like the weight of the last 24 hours had aged him 10 years. Claire, what are you doing? I set down my glass, stayed seated. Fixing a mistake. We can work through this. I'll talk to Morgan. I held up a hand. Stop. This isn't about your mother. His jaw flexed. You blindsided me. With lawyers, with contracts, with facts, I said. Everything you own was built with my money, and every time she tore me down, you stood by, grateful that I didn't fight back, but I was always keeping score. He stepped closer, more desperate now. You want to punish me? Fine. Take the penthouse. Take half. But don't destroy the firm. Adam, I said gently, you never owned the firm. He froze. I just assumed. Exactly, you assumed that I'd fund it, that I'd step aside, that I'd be grateful to be tolerated in a family that never accepted me. He looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find a foothold. Morgan's furious, he said finally, like it was supposed to move me. Good, I replied. She should be. She thinks you planned this. I stood now, calm, collected. I didn't, but I'm glad it's happening. You can't just take everything. I'm not taking anything. I'm keeping what's mine. He stood there in silence, watching as I crossed to the door. Claire, I waited for years for you to choose me, to stand up, to grow a spine. But now I see I was married to a man who only ever felt powerful in rooms where I stayed quiet. His eyes dropped. I was scared of losing everything. Then maybe you should have protected the woman who gave it to you. He left without another word, and I didn't cry, because grief needs love to survive, and I had none left for him. A week later, Morgan called me 3 times in a row. I picked up on the 4th. You ungrateful little parasite. I let her finish her tirade, all of it, and then calmly said, if you'd raised a stronger son, this never would have happened. Click. Blocked. Later that month, the divorce was finalized. My lawyer handed me the documents with a smile. You're free. No, I said, signing with steady hands. I'm just getting started. The penthouse was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel like loneliness. Now, it felt like space. I stood barefoot on the balcony, city lights glittering below me, glass of champagne in one hand, divorce papers on the table behind me, signed, sealed, filed, final. The settlement had been swift. Adam had no ground to stand on. Not after my legal team laid out every signed document, every contract with my initials, every asset trail that led back to me. He tried to negotiate, he begged, he threatened court. But the moment my lawyer dropped the paperwork that confirmed my 51% stake in his firm, he folded. The business was mine. The penthouse, already titled in my name, purchased through a trust I created. The accounts, frozen until redistributed. And guess who had proof of the initial deposits? Me. Morgan tried to spin the narrative. She called me a manipulator, a thief, a disgrace. I didn't respond, because the truth didn't need defending. It just needed time to work, and work it did. Adam resigned from the firm 6 days after the settlement. Morgan stopped showing her face at charity luncheons. Their kingdom, built on inheritance and image, cracked, because the foundation was never theirs to begin with. Weeks later, I received a letter, handwritten, neat cursive, from one of Morgan's former daughters-in-law, a woman I barely knew, married to Adam's cousin. I saw what you did. Thank you for not letting them win. You walked away the way we all dreamed of. I pinned it to the fridge, right next to the partnership agreement Morgan never knew existed. One morning, my phone buzzed with a familiar number. Adam, can we talk? I stared at the screen, then typed back. About what? He replied after a long pause. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I exhaled, not with pain, but clarity. That's not my problem anymore. Blocked. I spent that evening in silence. No TV, no music, just me. A woman they underestimated. A woman they tried to humiliate. A woman who gave everything and then took it all back. Because power? It isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It signs the papers, sips the wine, and walks out the door without looking back.